The new Victorians. Erin Carter. Okay. Simon Bartolo. Simon Sharkey. Okay. Okay. So, thanks for staying. I don't know how the wine's going to work, but I think they'll be coming around with our wine options. So it's red or white. So basically, I'm going to try and be very short and even leave some space for panel questions. So I just have a question for each of you. I promise it's not going to take longer than half an hour in all. So let me start, obviously, with the new Victorians, who are Bettina and Philippa, because it's like we always call you the new Victorians. But so basically, what is your biggest pride in this show, and what is your biggest regret, if there's any?
Over to you. I think the thing I'm most proud of, apart from like the music and the storytelling, is the team that we grew and developed. I think the cast of like the 20, like the dancers, the actors, the way everyone was like so important to the process, like with Simon, with crew, and I think that is for me our biggest success, bringing so many people together to make this is what I'm proudest of.
Your regret, apparently.
Your regret?
My regret?
My regret is having a show outdoors, because we had so many problems with the slide, and every day the weather was different, every day the slide was different, which is why we were a bit late today. So if I ever did this again, I would do it in a controlled environment inside.
What she said. Next question. Same or...
No, I do have another question. So basically, one of the biggest advantages that this show had when it comes to the bigger picture of Teatru Malta programming, most of the artists were in the room all the time. It was a professional process, so all these artists you've seen performing today actually spent whole days in a room with a stage built, a very big room, yes, with the stage built there, and you worked with them, right, with the music being... So how did that process work, and what advantages did it create, what possibilities did it create?
Amazing. So we started our process a while before we met up with the rest of the company in terms of research. So on our own, before meeting them, we kind of broke down what we thought the story was in 10 parts. And then on the first day, we kind of asked the company a bunch of questions about what they feel their relationship to this public holiday is, if they know anything about it or not, what they think the story is about. And then if they had to break it down into 10 parts, kind of what would their parts be? And then we kind of matched ours up and presented ours. And we basically said that throughout the course of this process, we'll keep asking these exact same questions and see if our answers change. And so we had a 2-week R&D in March, where we already had the slide and we thought we had mastered it. Oh, how wrong we were. And we just kind of got familiar with the slide and the physicality and the language of the piece in general. And we really just kind of content generated and dug up a bunch of ideas. After those 2 weeks, we went away from the company and kind of polished those ideas, and then came back and presented what we thought we structured to then play with it even more with the company. So it was an amazing process, because we have 8 amazing dancers, 12 actors who can kind of do everything, speak 3 languages and everything. And I mean, the challenge for them is that you get a script the day it's written, basically, and there's no backstory or like actioning time or all of that. You just have to kind of give it. But the pro is that we get to compose music live in the room to what they're giving us. And I feel like that way it's a much more organic process. So that's my answer.
Thank you for your answer. Next question. Issa ħan irrispetta naqra r-realtà bilingwi tal-produzzjoni u san saqsik bil-Malti, Simon. Mela, biex tifmu daqxej kif ħadmet il-bicċa xogħol, Simon kien it-traduttur, però mhux traduttur kif nafu ġo kamra jittraduċi xogħol waħdu, ħadem viċin ħafna ma' Erin Carter li kienet il-kittiba u anka mar jara l-provi u kien qed jara x-xogħol isir. Għandi żewġ domandi dwar il-lingwa, ma forsi tirrispondihom f'risposta waħda. L-ewwel waħda fil-proċess ma' Erin, meta tkun qed titratta storja bħal din, hemm ħafna riski li tittieħu deċiżjonijiet li ġib il-Kassar Torreġġani u l-Franzija bħala kważi il-baddies għanu kelma Ingliża fix-show jew affarijiet oħra. Kif saru daw id-deċiżjonijiet? Kif tħaddittu iktar mill-lingwa ġifieri l-istorja daħlet fl-użu tal-lingwa? U t-tieni mistoqsija hija kif ħassejtek, naħseb dan kien l-ewwel tip ta' kollaborazzjoni ta' dan it-tip, kif ħassejtek taħdem ma' kittiba Skoċċiża biex titkellem fuq storja daqshekk Maltija mingħajr ma titlaq mill-ruħ Maltija?
Well, naħseb li kbar bedi li kien hemm, bdejt inħossina kien kun jomu bħali. Għax kien tal-gazzetta. Ma' Erin ħdim tajjeb ħafna x'iktar milli sempliċement trattajnija bħala storja Maltija, iktar trattajnija bħala storja kolonjali. U peress li hija kienet hija Skoċċiża, konna niddiskutu l-kwistjoni tal-lingwa il-ħin kollu bejn it tnejn u għalt li fil-każ tagħhom il-lingwa tilfuha ħafna iktar minna. Aħna wasalna f'punt fejn aħna kważi totalment bilingwi bħala pajjiż, mentri huma ħafna iktar anglofoni milli xejn. Kien hemm xi biċċiet oħra l-mistoqsija.
Kienet kif ħassejtek inti f'dal proċess? Ġifieri biex tirrispetta ruħ Maltija?
Kien hemm momenti emozjonali, kien hemm momenti fejn ħassejt nibża li ħankun wisq il-barrani, the outsider, għax kulħadd kien diġà qed jaħdem flimkien il-mużika kien. Imma malli kont nidħol fis-sala fil-maħżen fejn konna kordin, fejn kien ikun hemm ħafna kesħa, anke fil-ġranet sħan. Mal-ewwel malli nidħol kemm mill-New Victorians, ma qed ngħid eżempju. L-atturi kollha Erin stess, kont inħossni mal-ewwel parti mit-tim. Malli nasal. U kienet esperjenza li hija kif qed inti ġdida kemm mill-lat tekniku għax traduċejt b'mod li qatt ma traduċejt qabel. Waqt li qed isiru traduċejt biċċiet, Erin kitbet biċċiet u jiena traduċejthom li naħseb they didn't make the final cut. U naħseb li mhux ħanejt li kienet regret, anzi xi ħaġa sabiħa li qisu kien hemm iktar layers milli deru imma li taw iktar shape, is-sura tar-riżultat aħħari li rajna kien hemm daw il-layers kollha li bil-kemm deru imma li aħna nafu bihom.
Grazzi. So back to English. So Simon Sharkey is one of the founders actually of National Theatre Scotland. He's a professional director and arts expert, I would say, working around the world. And this was part also of our Young Directors program. So the New Victorians happen to be quite young, especially Philippa's the younger. And we decided that Simon would be the perfect mentor for them because they had worked in Scotland before, they knew Simon, and Simon was very much involved in the whole process. So Simon, 2 questions. One of them is how do you think does this show play internationally? So this is as a national theatre company, we're a young theatre company, as you know, but it's also our first fully professional process in terms of being full-time, being employed full-time towards the production. So in terms of process and product, how does this play? And what do you think of the talent pool here and of the way things work in the arts right now?
I'll answer your second question first. It's ridiculously talented here. It's fantastic, and it is. I met Bettina and Philippa when they were 16, 17, and to watch the growth in the talent here over those 8 years or so has been a real privilege and quite phenomenal. To bring me on as a mentor or artistic advisor, I think was, I have no advice to give these people because the talent, honestly, is phenomenal. And I'm saying that from a perspective of traveling the world and seeing different pools of talent. And the youth, it's precocious, the talent that these people have, and the ambition and the aspiration to be able to pull this off is phenomenal. It really is. So that's the answer to the second question, and you should pat yourself on the back for being able to pull this off. It's a huge ambition. In terms of its international voice, I think there's... I'm really moved by this show every time I see it, because it's telling a story, a really important story of a change in history. But it's also telling a story of a moment that we are in right now. There are different forms of colonization, I think, and the world is going through a period of economic and technological colonization everywhere. And it's the people that are being most affected that have the least amount of voice. And every time I watch this show, I go, oh my goodness, this story has got to be shared and told in this context to let people know that they do have a voice and they do have a way of being able to have that voice heard, which is through an amazing piece of theatre like this. So I think the potential for international exposure of this moment in time, but its relevance now is really good. There's a challenge, of course, in that there's you can't transport a slide or such a large cast, but I would never say never. But the other challenge is the language, of course. But I think it could easily be transposed into English to make it tourable. But there's other ways of being able to talk about this show through production and stuff like that. But it's a phenomenal success, I think.
Thank you very much, Simon. So I'd like to keep to my promise, and the next questions I'll take from the panel. So we have 10 more minutes of questions. So just wave your hand, and I'll have to choose who goes first. Go. Okay. Obviously, since no one put up their hand immediately, I'll go automatically to Narsi Kalamata, because I know he has a question, because you told me before.
I would like to know who designed the set. You talked about it being the elephant in the room, but I see that the set is well designed in that it has depths and levels, and it was well used, especially when you lay out the first few rows on the same level at the stage. Then, of course, you have the scene laid out in different levels. I think it gave the actors that much impetus to really be physical in the whole thing. And that is not what you see on television. That is not what you see in a proscenium arch stage normally. That is a new theater, something different for us. We need this in Malta. It has been going on since 1917, after the Russian Revolution. Eisenstein and others started this dance theater and bringing circus elements in the theater. And I feel that in Malta, we have missed it. Please give us more.
Thank you. So just to make a question out of that is, so the set was designed by Aldo Moretti, who's not here today. He's an Italian set designer, works a lot on the island. But what came first? So because there's always a risk of a set like this being you sacrifice other things to have this set. So why did you want this? Was this a discussion with Aldo? I know you always you imagined the slide in the show because I remember it. So tell us more.
Basically, just as soon as Sean Bahajar mentioned this story and Valletta, as in and riots and stuff happening around Valletta, I was kind of interested in making this kind of modern, minimalist, freestanding Valletta, where kind of basically because the Maltese at this point in history are at their most exhausted and malnourished, but like overworked, I kind of wanted to watch them getting exhausted and like struggling in this like in the scene always. I think I made the struggle a bit too real because just this week we had major issues with the slide. It used to be white, varnished, super slippery, but then when we came outdoors, the dew had its own fun, and then we had to resurface it. But I still love the slide. I just think it's just been one really fun challenge, and equally kind of it forces you to be creative in like different angles, almost just because you're like, what works facing us now with the stage almost coming up and out as us? How can we reimagine moments? So like the moment coming in and out of the Assemblea, we found totally because we had the slide in the R&D. So really, that's the answer. I was kind of inspired by Valletta, and then the thought of having it outdoors and possible because of the space. I was just like, okay, giant slide, Aldo. Let's find a way.
Okay, let me make another question out of Narci's intervention. So Narci mentioned the dance theater. This is our second collaboration with the National Dance Company. I would also call this event theater. There's a lot going on. From what I am seeing personally, I think that one of the futures of theater, besides theater in the community and by the community, is also theater where the artists are athletes. And I think by the way, that's the cast, so let's give them another clap now that they're... What do you think about this, Simon? Is this now? Is this future? Is this already passé? What is it?
Theatre Without Walls is how we branded National Theatre Scotland, and we're really pleased to see that Teatru Malta is also a theatre without walls, and that's not just about doing it in outdoor spaces like this with challenges like the slide. It's a metaphor for breaking the boundaries and breaking the way that we can experience theatre. So I think it is now, and it is the future, and I think the challenge that was overcome here has proven that can work.
I definitely personally agree that this style of work has rarely been seen on the island. Any other questions? Come on, you know you want to. Okay, we have another question from Narci, but before that, I'm going to insist on another question. No? No, okay. One last question from Narci. Costumes. Okay, the costumes were designed by Luca Zoppardi. I don't know if Luke is here. Is Luke here? Luke? Yeah, he was here, but I haven't seen him. But maybe you can answer this. So, what was the process that brought us to these costumes? Obviously, it's not what you would imagine if you close your eyes and say Sette Junio and do it 1,000 times. You'd never end up with this. So, what brought you to this?
I kind of was interested in how we're going to establish these kind of three communities visually, musically, and everything in terms of the like educated clergy, intelligentsia, Italian speaking, the kind of Maltese who spoke like Malta-Tarkcina, and then the British. And so we're discussing with Luke also the challenges of there being a bunch of people to represent, like 10,000 people to represent, but only having 20 cast members. So then we kind of fell upon language in the sense that there would be this bass tone for the full ensemble, which would be like the peasant Maltese in white, and then we'll have these add-ons where they can kind of become different characters. I kind of just gave Luke that vague idea that I'd wish for the colors to be like white, red, and blue, and throughout the course of the piece, we're getting rid of the blue because we're getting rid of the English. And then I kind of let him have fun with how to bring that to life. So that's that. That's Luke.
Okay, one last question before we can all go get a glass of wine. Bettina, the music. I think the music was a fantastic element of the show, and it's obviously the new Victorians style. Yeah. Is it the first time you've sung in Maltese? Is this the new Victorians? No, well, once before, so almost. So how was the process? What came first? Did you hear the sounds first? Did you write the lyrics first? Did you work with the actors first? What came first? And what do you think that this music has a lifetime besides this show?
So I think in the beginning, my process was like doing all the research. Obviously, I feel I became a Maltese historian over 6 months. Like we've read every book there was. And I had gone to speak to a university lecturer who like did the history of music, just to see also like what would the music of the time have been like. How would the Maltese, the British, and the academics, what would they have been listening to? How would that have been different? And we did want to have as well like 3 musical languages for each one. And in its simplest form, maybe you understood that like when the British came, there was always that snare and the band club vibe. And when the kind of people who were dressed in red, like the church and the university people came out, there was always like an organ and a kind of a high class sound. I mean, I wish it would have been an orchestra, but it had to be an organ this time. And then just like the Maltese having their own language, their own songs, us singing about them. So there was a lot that I kind of prepared a palette to go into the room with when we came to the R&D. So I had just a lot of ideas of what I thought could work. But then as we kind of improvised and viewpointed with the actors, I would just improvise as well and record everything, which is actually where a lot of the music came from. And we had like Maltese poems and a lot of different writings, which I would just pull from during the R&D process. And then we just, again, like Phil said, in that 1 month in between rehearsals and R&D, just went home to kind of finalize everything and polish things up. And I think the songs really worked. We loved singing in Maltese and in English and getting the cast to do the same. I mean, the dream is to have the Sette album to go with the show. But no, and I think like, especially with Fight in Us being the, Still Got Fight, sorry, being the song we have on the radio as well at the moment, it just for us is really rewarding to see our audiences coming together as well. So people who would normally come to a New Victorians gig coming to the theatre and enjoying a piece that had dancers and actors and was not exactly a gig. So I think that really worked, and it was very rewarding, a giant challenge, because this was originally going to be an hour show and ended up being a 2-hour show. So suddenly it was a lot of music to create, but we did well, I think. We managed, we enjoyed it, and we had a great sound team here helping us out.
Okay, so that's it. That's Taħdita Teatru. I thank Marsovina, our sponsors. You can take a glass of wine. I also would like to thank Arts Council Malta and Fondazzjoni Celebritajiet Nazzjonali, who trusted us with this crazy re-rendering of the Sette Junior story. So I thank them. And one final plea, if you like the show, we're trying to create new audiences. We're trying to get new people to the theater, so help us get the message out there. Good night. Thank you.